Greetings and welcome to a special episode of Morrowind Showcases, taking a look at a preview alpha build of Stros M'Kai in the Third Era, a new landmass project headed by the Grey Wizard, and this is a relatively new project that just burst onto the scene back in March, and it's already made a ton of progress, but before we get started, I must point out that this is an alpha. Not everything is finalized yet, especially not interiors, so much of what you see will be subject to change. I'd also like to take a moment and point out that any modders out there who'd like to have an early preview of their work showcased on this channel are more than welcome to send me their current work in progress builds, and I know a lot of you have been, secretly working on landmass mods for years, partly because you've told me in private messages, and, I'd love to help out with PR if you're looking to get the word out. But anyway, you'll find a list of Stros M'Kai project links down in the video description below. So let's get started with our tour, shall we? We're going to start things out in the harbour district of Port Hunding, which is one of only two settlements on the island, the other being the small village of Saints Port. And Port Hunding itself is a fairly large city with a lot of unique Redguard-inspired architecture, from tall and dominating towers to a massive statue that guards the harbour. Now, the island of Stros M'Kai has actually been visited a few times in the Elder Scrolls universe, being the setting of the 1998 Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard, and also one of the starting locations in the Elder Scrolls Online, and I think it's the starting location for the Daggerfall Covenant, if I'm not mistaken. And personally, I've only actually played the Elder Scrolls Online version, but from what I can tell, Stros M'Kai in the Third Era is a pretty faithful remake of the island with clear inspirations from the original game. Really, one of the highlights so far from the Stros M'Kai project is most likely the number of unique buildings and architectural pieces that have been generated for it so far, with some very interesting looking houses along the harbour front here, as well as elsewhere in the city, that seem to combine some of the existing Morrowind architecture into new shapes. So, you can see there's some buildings with clear Imperial, Halalu, and Velothi influences about them, but they've been modified into basically new architecture sets. Now, I do need to apologise for the frame rate drops here. Stros M'Kai in the Third Era is an interior-based landmass, which on the pro side means it's compatible with pretty much every other mod from Morrowind out there, but on the con side does mean it'll run into a few FPS issues, since the game is essentially trying to load the entire landmass at once, and Morrowind's game engine really wasn't designed with large interior cells in mind, or really much of anything in mind, since Morrowind's game engine isn't exactly the greatest. But anyway, Port Hunding is a fairly urban city with a lot of close-quartered buildings right in the centre of town, including a row of shops and houses built right on top of one another, right along the main street in front of the palace walls here. And there's definitely a lot of cool designs in use here, and the city itself, I have to say, looks pretty great so far. The Grey Wizard has done an amazing job in seemingly a very short amount of time. One of the more impressive locations here in Port Hunding is without doubt the palace itself, where the governor resides and rules over the island. This is a really scenic bit of architecture here, and definitely one of the highlights of the city. We're going to take a bit of a fly over the palace grounds, which includes a lovely set of waterfalls from the nearby mountain here, as well as a small river that technically divides the palace off from the rest of town. You'll also notice that the palace has some rather nice stained glass windows, and just moving on, you'll notice that the city does use a few traditional Morrowind pieces here and there, like Velothi and Raidorian walls, which I think there might be plans to replace those later on. I'm not entirely sure. Again, this is an alpha build. I can't say that enough. So, again, not everything is finalized. And heading back to the rest of the city here, we're next going to be stopping in at the town Plaza, which is on the other side of town from the harbour. And those of you who've played the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard will probably recognise the plaza here as being very similar in design to the one found in the 1998 game. The central fountain and landmark here is almost identical to the original design, and in addition you'll also find the Mages Guild, Temple of Arkay, and the Dragon Tail Tavern here as well. This is one of the more historic and again quite scenic parts of the city, and you can see there's been a fair number of new models created for the project here, with, stained glass windows for the Mages Guild, the fountain and the Temple of Arkay, not to mention a few homes and towers that border the plaza. The Grey Wizard has done an amazing job producing a large array of new models and architecture for the project so far. Though some of these may again be up for replacement. It's really hard to say with the project in an alpha state here. Anything can change with new updates, so that's something to always keep in mind. Now we're going to just fly through the city here before we head out to the rest of the island, and it should be noted that there is going to be, in the final version of Stros M'Kai, a number of dungeons beneath the island itself, such as goblin caves, sewers, and catacombs, and while some of that has been implemented already, those areas are a bit unfinished still. Most of these buildings don't even have finalized interiors yet either, and if you're interested in helping out, especially with regards to building interiors or designing quests, you should really contact the Grey Wizard to see how you can help out, either on the official forums or on ModDB. And anyway, we're next going to be moving back towards the Bay Area of Stros M'Kai, where you can clearly see Saintsport just a short walk outside of town, as well as the famed Duma Observatory, the Ori, I think it's called, and some nearby Duma ruins, some of the only functioning Duma ruins in Hammerfall, occupying a good bit of the Ogre's Tooth Mountains here. Now, before we get to those Duma ruins, though, we're going to check out the small village of Saintsport, which really isn't much of a town or anything, just about 4 or 5 buildings and a docks. The main feature here is arguably the lighthouse, which lights the way for incoming ships looking to dock at Port Hunding. But you know, aside from that, the architecture here in Saintsport is probably its most interesting and notable feature, with several rather unique looking and newly designed buildings, and we're going to try and get a bit of a closer view here. Saintsport is still very much a work in progress. I don't think any of these buildings even have interiors yet, and there'll probably be some more exterior detailing at a later date. But of course, you can already get a sense of how the town will look like from the architecture here. Now our next stop is the Duma ruins found along the Ogre's Tooth Mountains, which have a commanding view of the surrounding areas of Stros M'Kai. And as a side note, I do really like the sort of verticality that's been built into the current version of Stros M'Kai, from the towers of Port Hunding to these Duma ruins that can be seen towering in the distance from a good portion of the island chain. But anyway, according to lore, these Duma ruins are supposed to be fully functional, or at least they were back in the second era when the games Redguard and the Elder Scrolls Online take place. But as of yet, they don't have any interiors, so we're just going to be looking at the exteriors here. And one of the cool things, though, is that you can get some pretty amazing views of Port Hunding from up here, and you can see the city in the distance. There's one more small area that we're going to be taking a look at here, and that's a small chain of islands known as the Spine that go off from Stros M'Kai's northern coast. These are all connected together by rope bridges, and there's been a fair bit of exterior detailing down out here, making it a rather scenic place to visit. And given the nearby ship, this might be a likely place to find smugglers, bandits, or some other riffraff in the finalized version. And real quick, we're going to be taking a look at a few interiors next, and I can't stress this enough, these are not necessarily complete yet, the mod's in an alpha state, and these interiors will likely be updated at a later time. First we have the Stros M'Kai Palace in Port Hunding, which has a rather regal design, and you'll notice it implements a bit of a Raydoran architectural style as well. And here's a set of catacombs beneath the Chapel of Arche, naturally occupied by skeletons and the like. This build is a bit grid-like, with lots of corpses laid to rest on the walls here, and I believe this actually uses a new custom tile set. And anyway, that about wraps up everything that I wanted to take a look at here for the alpha preview build here. And we'll most likely be showcasing this again in a month or two after more work's been done. But if you'd like to help out, please check out the ModDB page and contact the Grey Wizard. You'll find project links in the video description below. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.